Hello, everyone. This is the review for the final exam. I am going to go through these questions very quickly because obviously it's a review. So here we go. Question number 1 has to do with finding the domain in the range. Remember, the domain represents all your x's, okay, while the range represents all your y values. So for this particular question right here, when they ask you for the domain will consist of the -1 from the first point, -2 from the second point, 0 from the third point, 1, and then the +2 from the last point. If there is a repeated element, you can only use it once. Next, we have the range. The range, remember, represents all the y values, guys. So in the case of this relation, the range would include, let me use a different color here. The range would include the -1 from the first point, -8 from the second point, 0 from the third point, 1 from the fourth point, and then +8. And just like that, guys, we're done. So let me clear this one out. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next problem. And here comes the next problem. Now for this one here, they're asking you to find the domain in the range. And obviously it's in multiple choice format. So for this one right here, guys, the domain, remember, just like with the previous problem, has to do with your x's. So you have to ask the question, where, remember these graphs, they go from left to right. So where does the graph start on the left side? It starts over here at this point. This point is right here on the x-axis at +1, okay? So look at your answer choices, guys, A, B, C, and D. Now you see where the first point is at? It's at +1. Now, additionally, you notice it has an open circle. That open circle says it's excluded. It's not included as part of the answer. So if you're looking at the answer choices, remember we're taking these tests and working smart, not hard, okay? So if you're looking at the answer choices, you can eliminate some of the answer choices. Actually, there's only one obvious answer for this one, where the 1 is excluded, it's not included. Remember, if you have greater than, less than, use an open dot or parentheses, okay? So the only one that has that is letter A. So really, there's nothing else you can do. You got your answer, but if you want to keep going, where the graph ends is at this point right here. At this point, we're at x equals 2, +8. So the graph, the domain of this graph goes from 1, not included, up to 8, included. You notice the circle is shaded on the 8. So because it's included, you want to use the brackets or the shaded circles, and that includes the inequalities less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. And remember, you can also use the brackets to show that the boundary value is included. All right, so let me go ahead and go to the next part of this because I have to show you the next part for the range. So I'm checking my answer here. All right, so here comes the next part. On the range, guys, the range is the vertical part of the graph, the part of the graph going up and down. So since we're talking about the range now, we're looking at the lowest y value up to the largest possible y value on the graph. The graph starts right here, and the y value looks like it's at +4. I'm barely getting that. And once again, because that point right there is excluded, that y value must be excluded as well. So when you're looking at the answer choices, guys, the only one that has the y value at 4, where it's excluded with just the less than, is letter C. But if you want to keep going, you can. The graph continues vertically. It keeps increasing until it gets to this point where it ends right here at +8, okay? So basically the graph starts at 4, it's excluded, and it continues all the way up to +8, and it is included. And the only one that says that is letter C, all right? So very straightforward problem. Now, if it was a continuous graph, you would include the infinities in there, but it's not a continuous graph. Now, on this one right here, guys, this one, they're asking you to graph it using the intercepts. So I'm just going to go to the XY plane and show you guys how to graph it. Remember, the entire test is multiple choice, guys. So a couple of things. Here, let me write the function over here for you guys. I want to show you. The function is -4x plus 8. So 8 is your y-intercept. So you would go along the y-axis line. where y is equal to 8 and plot the first point right there. Okay, that's your y-intercept. And then the slope is the coefficient of x, which is -4/1. So because the slope is a negative, this is telling you to travel 4 units down, okay? And then move 1 unit to the right before you can plot the second point. So let me go ahead and demo this for you on the XY plane. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on here, grab the line tool. I'm gonna plot my y-intercept at 8. My slope was -4/1. Remember, that's rise over 1. So you're gonna travel 4 units down, 1 unit to the right, and then plot your second point. So from this point, we're gonna go down 1, 2, 3, 4 units down, 4 units, okay, in the negative direction, and then 1 unit in the positive direction, and plot your second point. So there's your graph. And just like that, you're done. But guys, remember the entire test is multiple choice, so you shouldn't have to worry about that, okay? So this one right here, guys, they're asking you to find the slope. And I think one of the questions on the test also asks you to find the y-intercept. So because of the nature of this equation right here, guys, the first thing you have to do is to take the equation and rewrite it in y equals mx plus b form. So once you have it in y equals mx plus b form, you can actually eyeball this and figure out the slope and the y-intercept. So let me go ahead and rewrite this equation over 2x minus 3y is equal to 6. So you want to take the 2x, move it over. Okay, once you move it over to the right side, it becomes a -2x plus 6. And remember, the goal here is to solve for y, isolate y. So you want to divide every single term by -3. So then this would cancel out, leaving with y equals 2. 2/3 x minus 2, guys. So now you have your equation in slope-intercept form. Remember, the slope is the variable m, which is the coefficient of x. So here, your coefficient of x is 2/3. So therefore, your slope is 2/3. Now, if they were to ask you for the y-intercept, the y-intercept in this case would be -2. Remember, you substitute 0 and for x and solve for y. So the y-intercept would be -2, but as a coordinate point, it would be 0, -2, and that's it, okay? So easy problem, guys, very straightforward. So let's move on to the next one. And number 5, the cost to attend a movie is $5 for an adult, per adult, while children are admitted at $2. If a movie was attended by 54 individuals who paid a total of $144, how many adults and how many children attended the movie? Okay, so this one, it looks like we're going to have to write an equation to solve this, guys, okay? Personally, you know what? I'm just gonna do this in 2 variables. So we had X number of adults plus Y number of children, which added up to 54. Once again, I'm letting X be the number of adults, and a Y represents the number of kids, okay? And the adults paid $5 per ticket, while the kids paid $2 per ticket, and the total collected was $144, okay? So you got a system, you got to solve the system. You got a couple of options to solve the system. You can use substitution or elimination. I'm just gonna do a quick elimination on this one by multiplying the first equation by -2, okay? And why am I multiplying it by -2? Because I want to eliminate the y variable, so therefore the coefficients of y must be the same with opposite signs, okay? So that's why I decided to go ahead and multiply by a -2. So this cancels out the y variable, and then you add what's left over, so that leaves you with 3x is equal to 36, a positive 36 at that. And then you want to divide both sides by 3, and so x turns out to be 12. Remember, x represents the number of adult tickets. So there's 12 adult tickets. Here, let me see if I could write it on here. My iPad is not letting me, but there you go. 12 adult tickets. There was a total of 54 individuals who bought tickets. So if 12 of them were adults, how many children tickets were purchased? Well, 54 minus 12 leaves you with 42. So 42 would be the number of children's tickets that were purchased. And just like that, guys, we're done. Again, remember, this is a review, so I'm kind of going through it quickly. All right, so on this one, guys, they just want you to go ahead and solve it, and then they want you to write the answer in interval notation. You see that? Interval notation. So I'm going to take this, and I am going to solve it. Remember, when you're solving these type of problem, guys, especially since it's on inequality, you got to be careful. The goal here is to isolate the variable in the middle here. So we're going to start off by subtracting the 6 from the middle, 6 from the left, and 6 from the right. So when we do that, that leaves us with a -8 less than, this cancels out, -2x less than or equal to 6. Additionally, guys, you're still trying to isolate the x, you got to divide by -2 to isolate that x in the middle. Because you are dividing by a negative, guys, that's going to reverse the inequality symbols. So you'll end up with 4 is greater than x. Both inequality symbols must be reversed because you're dividing by a negative. Whenever you divide by a negative, remember that's the rule. Whenever you divide by a negative, you must reverse, switch, or flip the inequality symbols. Now, we got our solution as an inequality, but we have to express it in interval notation. What you have to realize is that this inequality is incorrectly written in numerical order. So I'm going to rewrite it so that the -3 is to the left and the +4 is on the right, because when we read, guys, we like to read in increasing order, numerical order. So now that it's better written, now we can go ahead and write it in interval notation. Remember, when you're doing interval notation, greater than, less than, parentheses, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, brackets. So on this one right here, when we express this in interval notation, we're going to start off with a bracket with a -3, comma, +4, and close it off with a parentheses. And that's it, guys. That's it for this one. All right, number 7, we are going to simply combine like terms on this one. We're subtracting 2 polynomials. One of the things I like to do, especially since this is a difference, I like to distribute the negative over the second parentheses. And when I distribute the negative over the second parentheses, that -4x squared inside the parentheses becomes a +4x squared. Additionally, as I write these terms, I'm lining up the like terms, okay? So again, I'm going to apply that negative to the -2x in the second parentheses. It's going to become a +2x. Likewise, I'm going to take that negative and apply it to the -5, so it's going to become a +5. And now I can proceed to adding the terms together, just combine like terms. So 6x squared plus 4x squared gives me 10x squared, and then -x plus 2x gives me x. Last but not least, -2 plus 5 gives me a +3. So guys, I am simply combining like terms. That's all this problem had to do with, right? Next one, we are multiplying -3x to the second by -4x to the 5th power, and then 2x. Now, on this one right here, guys, what they want us to do is to multiply the numbers together, okay, the constants together, and multiply the variables together. So we got a -3 times -4 times 2. -3 times -4 is +12. 12 times 2, that's 24. Now, with the variables, when you're multiplying with the same base, what you do is you keep the base and add the powers on the variable. So the power here is 2, the power here is 5, the power here is 1. Add them up together, so you get the 8th power. Nice, that's it. Okay. Now, on this one right here, they want us to find f of 7 times g of 7. So we got to find the product of f of 7 and g of 7. So we got to find the value of f of 7 by substituting in 7 into the f function. So we do -13 times 7 and then plus 1. Let me see, -13 times 7, that's going to be a -91 plus 1, which gives me a -90. Hopefully you guys can see that. Yeah, you can see it. And I'm also going to calculate the value of g of 7 by substituting in 7 into the second function. the g of x function. So 7 squared, that's 49, plus 17. So 49 plus 17 is going to give you 66, okay? Now, they wanted us to find the product of f of 7 and g of 7. So now we're going to do a quick substitution. 90 for f of 7, 66 for g of 7, and then we're going to multiply them together. Unfortunately, I can't think of that off the top of my head, so let me just go ahead and drop this into a calculator, okay? And get the answer. So this one is 5940, guys. 5940. And that's it, 5940. All right. Next, we've got, let me see here, another word problem. The tuition at a local state college was, okay, the tuition at a local state college was $3,150 in 2005. Since then, tuition has increased approximately $140 per year. So your question is to let T represent the years since 2005, and F of T represents the tuition for any given year. Write an equation that will give the cost of tuition for any year from 2005. So guys, the F of T equation will be equal to the initial tuition in 2005, $3,150, plus the increase per year, which was $140 per year, and we're letting T be the number of years. Now, this is perfectly fine, but you can also rewrite it as F of T is equal to 140T plus 3150. It really doesn't matter which way you express this, okay? Either one is acceptable. And yes, you will see these word problems on the exam, guys. All right, so let me go ahead and clear this one out. Now, for this particular problem right here, we're not going to see every single part of this problem on the test. You're only going to get 2 questions pertaining to this. So I'm gonna quickly run through each one. For F of G of 2, guys, listen. They want you to calculate G of 2 and then take that answer and plug it into the F function. So G of 2 will be 2 times 2 minus 7, which gives you a -3. So then you want to take that -3 and replace G of 2 with it. Substitute the -3 in for G of 2, which goes into the F function. So now you're finding F of -3. So you take the -3, substitute that into the F function, -3 squared, and then plus the 4. So this one turns out to be 9 plus 4, which is 13. 13, guys, 13. All right. So some of you may be wondering, well, does that mean that G of F of 2 will come out to be the exact same thing? Absolutely not. It will not come out to be the exact same thing. So let me quickly work that one out for you. G of F of 2, so you can see the difference. This one, you got to calculate F of 2 first. Now, F of 2 requires you to substitute 2 in for the F function. So you get 2 squared plus 4, which gives you 4 plus 4, and that's 8. So since F of 2 is 8, we can go back into the original problem and substitute 8 in for the F of 4, and then calculate the value of G of 8. So now you take 8, plug it into the G function, 2 times 8, and then minus the 7. 2 times this is 16. 16 minus 7 leaves you with 9. See, 2 completely different answers, guys. Yeah, absolutely. So then the next question you might be asking yourself, well, what does that mean about F of G of X? Now for F of G of X, they want you to take the G of X function, substitute that into the F of X function. So you would end up with 2x minus 7 squared and then plus 4. So you want to calculate the 2x minus 7 squared and expand that. So in other words, you want to do 2x minus 7 multiplied by itself. And this is probably the safest thing to do instead of using the pattern. There is a pattern to multiply these, but I'm just going to multiply it out for you. So 2x times 2x gives you 4x squared. Then 2x times -7 gives you a -14x. And here it is again. That's going to give you another -14x. Of course, -7 times -7 gives you +49. And then you got the plus 4 over here. So bring down the 4x squared, add these two together, so that gives you a negative 28x. Add these two together, so that gives you 53. And just like that, you're done. That's what f of g of x. Now, I'm gonna leave this on the screen so I can compare the g of f of x with you guys, okay? So as you can tell, for g of f of x, you're going to take the f of x function and substitute that into the g function. So if you do that, this is what you end up with. 2 times whatever f of x is equal to, in this case, x squared plus 4, and then minus 7. So when you work it out, you get 2x squared plus 8 minus 7, which leaves you with 2x squared plus 1. So as you can tell, guys, 2 completely different answers, 2 completely different problems, okay? So right here, you've got your f of x, g of x, which gives you this, and then g of f of x, that gives you that. 2 different functions, okay? So they're not the same. But like I said, you're not gonna get every single part of this problem on the test, okay? It's gonna be one question at a time. So next question. On this one here, a toy manufacturer determines that the daily cost C for producing X units of a dump truck can be approximated by this function right here. How many toy dump trucks must the manufacturer produce per day in order to minimize the cost? Now, you hear that keyword, that operative word in there, guys, is the minimize, okay? You've got a quadratic function, and this quadratic function has a positive x squared value. So when you graph the quadratic, guys, the graph would look like this. So the question you have to ask yourself is, where would I go on this graph to find the minimum value? I would go to the vertex, okay? So yes, we're going to go to the vertex in order to be able to find the number of dump trucks that the manufacturer must produce every single day to minimize the cost. So X, we would use the formula X equals the opposite of B over 2 times A to calculate the minimum number of dump trucks this manufacturer needs to produce every day to minimize the cost, okay? X is the number of dump trucks, and so Y would represent the actual minimum cost, which is part B. The question is, what is the minimum daily cost, okay? So X is the number, and then Y represents the minimum cost. Okay, guys. So first, let me go ahead and identify the A value. That's the number in front of X squared, the coefficient of X squared. That's 0.01. And in the B value is the coefficient of X, that's -1. Oops, let me write that again, okay? So when I go into the little formula here, I'm going to do the opposite of B, which is 1, over 2 times the A value, which is 0.01, okay? Now, basically, you're going to grab a calculator and plug this into your calculator, 1 divided by 0.02, and let the calculator do that work for you, so you can figure out how many dump trucks this manufacturer needs to manufacture in a day in order to minimize the cost. And this one turns out to be 50, okay? All right, so that's part A, guys. Now part B, what is the minimum cost? So now you know how many trucks must be produced to minimize the cost. So to find the minimum cost, we're going to take the answer and substitute it right back into the function. So to figure out the minimum cost, we're going to do C of 50, okay, is equal to 0.01 substituted in for every single X, 50 squared minus 50, and then plus 99. Grab your calculator, plug this into the calculator. Make sure you're careful when you're plugging this into the calculator. It's 0.01 times 50 squared. Let me see here, 50 squared, and then minus 50, and then plus 99, guys. So the answer turns out to be 74. So the minimum cost is going to be $74. So that's the extent of the problem. Now, additionally, if you had one question that asked you to find the maximum, again, guys, the maximum reflects a graph that is opening down towards the negative side of the y-axis. So the maximum would still occur at the vertex. So you still will use the formula X equals the opposite of B over 2 times A. but this time they're talking about a maximum rather than a minimum. So whenever they talk about max min, go to the vertex. Did you guys hear that? Go to the vertex whenever they're talking about max min, okay? So on this one right here, this quadratic equation, we have to solve it, guys. Let's see here, x squared minus 2x minus 12 equals to x plus 28. First, we need to isolate the quadratic, as in set the quadratic equal to 0. So I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to subtract the x on both sides, as well as subtract 28 from both sides, so I can set the quadratic equal to 0. So essentially, this cancels out, leaving you with x squared minus 3x minus 40. All right, guys. Now, I think we have a beautiful quadratic equation. Why is it so beautiful? Because it's factorable, people. X squared splits up into x times x. Then we got to find two factors of negative 40, whose sum is negative 3. Two numbers that multiply to give you negative 40. However, their sum is negative 3. When you add them, you get negative 3. Those two numbers would be a negative 8, positive 5. So you want to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Or just ask the question, what number minus 8 makes the first parenthesis 0? Positive 8. What number plus 5 makes the second parenthesis equal to 0? Negative 5. So you're ending up with two solutions. Either x is 8 or x is negative 5, guys. Here's your two solutions. These are the numbers that would make the equation true. All righty. This one, quick factoring problem, guys. Be careful when you're factoring these. They want you to factor them completely. Okay, when you're factoring these type of problems, guys, you want to look for GCF first. Always ask that question. Does this have a GCF? Obviously, 7 and 35, they're both divisible by 7. Additionally, we can factor out some x's. What's the largest number of x's you can factor out of both terms? In this case, it's x cubed. Once you figure this out, guys, listen, to figure out what's left over, just divide each term by the GCF, and that will tell you what's left over inside the parentheses. So the 7's cancel out. You had x to the 5th, you're removing x to the 3rd, or you had 5 x's, you take out 3 x's. What does that leave you with? 2 x's. And then over here, obviously, the x cubes cancel out. And then 35 divided by 7 leaves you with 5. And just like that, you are done. What's inside the parentheses looks a little suspicious, like it's a difference of 2 squares, but it's not a difference of 2 squares. So you are essentially done. All right, guys, next. Oh, wait a minute. This one is easy. Why did I give you guys this one too? Oh, whatever. But anyways, let's do it, guys. Quick factoring problem, easy factoring problem. What two numbers multiply to give you a negative 21, and when you add them together, you get negative 4. That would be a negative 7, positive 3, and that's it. The one that we did earlier, it was an equation. We actually had to find the zeros. Here, it's just factoring. They just want you to factor it. All right, so let me go ahead and clear this one out. Okay. Next problem, guys. Oh, wait a minute. It did go to the next problem. All right, guys, we got to solve this one. V squared is equal to 4v. First step is to set the quadratic equal to 0. And to set this quadratic equal to 0, we're going to take the 4v, move it over to the left side, so it becomes a negative 4v. And as always, when you're factoring, guys, ask the question, is there a GCF? I mean, you don't have to ask the question out loud. You could just do it in your head, you know? Let me see. Does this have a GCF? Well, this one does. So we're going to factor out the GCF of v. That leaves us with a v minus 4. And then you want to take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve, guys. The zero product property right there. So right here, there's one of your solutions. And then this one, what number minus 4 makes it equal to 0? Positive 4. So there's your two solutions. V equals to 0 or V equals to 4. Remember, guys, this is a review. We've done these problems so many times already, okay? It's just a review. Now, this one, guys, we got to find the difference between two complex numbers. Like we did the polynomials, very similar to the polynomials. You want to combine the real with real, imaginary with imaginary. Now, I'm pausing here because we're finding the difference. So that negative needs to be distributed over the second parentheses. So the positive 9 becomes a negative 9. And then the negative 9i becomes a positive 9i. Notice how I'm lining up the like terms, guys? Yes, that makes a difference, okay? So 2 minus 9, or 2 plus negative 9 gives you a negative 7. And then 2i, negative 2i plus 9i gives you positive 7i. And just like that, we're done. Ah, easy problem. Okay, let me clear this one out. Now, on this one right here, guys, we are being asked to, let me see here, without solving, determine the character of the solutions of the quadratic equation in the complex number system. In other words, we have to determine, do we have 2 real roots, 1 real root, or 2 complex roots? And remember, the way we determine that is to use discriminant, and the discriminant is the part inside or under the square root in the quadratic formula, b squared minus 4 times a times c. Now, the quadratic should be equal to 0 first. It is. If it wasn't, you have to set it equal to 0 first. And then identify a, the coefficient of x squared, which is 2. Identify b, the coefficient of x, which is negative 8. And identify c, okay? C is the constant. Now you go into the formula and plug everything in. So you do a negative 8 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 1. So that's 64 minus 8. And 64 minus 8 turns out to be 56. So you're ending up with a positive value. When you end up with a positive discriminant, that's going to lead to 2 real roots. If you were to end up with 0 as the discriminant, that would lead to 1 real root. However, guys, if you end up with, I have to say something else, I just remember that. A negative, that's going to lead to 2 complex or imaginary roots, or sometimes you'll hear them referred to as not real. The roots are not real. Now, the thing I was thinking about saying is this. If you have a quadratic, guys, that leads to 2 real roots, that means that the quadratic is going to intersect the x-axis twice. So you might see something like this. If it leads to 1 real root, that means that the graph would only intersect the x-axis once. In this case, actually touch the x-axis once, okay, right there. And if it's going to lead to no real roots, that means that the graph would never intersect the x-axis, never, okay? So remember that, because that's going to appear on the test as well. All right, guys, here comes the next one. Let me see here. Number 19. Okay, determine the characteristics of the quadratic function. It's y equals to, Shazam, oh, I have something in my eye. X squared plus 4x minus 9. Okay, they want you to determine the direction of opening. X squared is positive, so it's going to open up. That's not really that serious, guys, because that's not on the test. But the axis of symmetry is on the test. And for that one, they want you to calculate the equation of the axis of symmetry. And to find the equation of the axis of symmetry, since it is an imaginary line that goes straight through the middle of the graph, intersects the graph at the vertex, it shares the same x value with the vertex. So we use the same formula to calculate the equation of the axis of symmetry. In the case of this problem right here, the a value is 1, the b value is 4. So you just go into the formula and substitute everything in there. The opposite of b would be a negative 4. I was about to put 2 over 2 times 1. So this one is going to simplify to negative 2. So therefore, your equation for the axis of symmetry is x equals to negative 2. Okay. By the way, that also is the x-axis of the vertex, which is the next part of the problem. So now all you have to do is to find the y value of the vertex by substituting in the x value into the equation to find the y value. So guys, you just need to do the work. Seriously, just do the work, okay? So on this one right here, I am going to do negative 2 squared, which is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8 minus 9. 4 minus 8 is negative 4. Negative 4 minus 9 gives you a negative 13. So guys, there's the coordinate of the vertex. And that's all you really need to know for this problem. How to find the vertex and how to find the axis of symmetry, and that's it. okay? I'm not even gonna do the y-intercept because that's, well, you know how to find the y-intercept. Plug in 0 for every x and solve. Or you could do a quick cover up. Hey, oh, let me do it right here. Quick cover up, hey, right there. Y equals to -9. That's your y-intercept. All right, guys. I'm done with this one. You know what? That just reminded me. That's something I need to put on TikTok. How do you find the y-intercept? You plug in 0 for every x, or better yet, hey, cover it up. You know what? I should do that TikTok right now. Oh my gosh. I hope you guys get to this point where you're actually listening to me carry on like that, okay? About a TikTok. Okay, I think what I'm gonna do is once I'm done with the video, I'm gonna do a TikTok for that. Seriously. Oh my God. Well, you guys asked for it, so you're actually getting me to do TikTok. Oh my God, this is too much. Guys, I'm learning so much this year in 2020. It's crazy. It's ridiculous, okay? The amount of information, the amount of knowledge I've acquired this year. Oh my God. It's like I am being pushed beyond my limits. But then, of course, you know what? We really never use our full brain capacity. So anyways, guys, I am learning. Just for this video right here, do you know I just learned a whole lot? Shazam. Okay, anyways, let me stop talking so much. Well, I have to do that. I don't always just teach straight through. I have to pause and have a little, I was gonna say interlude. Can you believe that's an old word, interlude? Intermission. How about this? An intermission, a comedic pause, okay? Let's say that. Anyways, we're almost done. I know many of you are not gonna get here, but for those of you who get to this point where you're actually listening, watching this video, good for you. I'm so proud of you, okay? That means you care about your grades, sugar plums. Wham! Anyways, I got to mark which minute I'm on. I have no clue what minute I'm on. So I can tell you guys to go directly to that minute. Oh, there's a marker on here. I just noticed that. You see, guys, I'm learning. Shazam. I think this is at minute like 45. I started all this bunch of talking. Tangent, okay? I went on this tangent, guys, about TikTok. Shazam. Anyway, I'll tell you guys in class where to start on the tangent. Oh my God, this video is going on a whole hour. I didn't intend it to be a whole hour review, people. Shazam. Thank God for technology. You can actually fast forward through the process and watch Miss Alcira in 1.5 speed, or maybe two times speed. Do they have 2 times speed? I gotta go check this out. Look at me. I went on a tangent, guys, for 3 minutes. What a waste. I could have been done with this review already, and I'm still talking. Shazam. Anyways, and I'm just talking to myself because there's nobody here. Just recording. Okay, number 20, guys. Let's solve this, okay? So on this one right here, guys, you got to solve it and find the value of x that would make this problem true. Obviously, there's a fraction involved, a couple of fractions, and I only say a fraction because the denominators are alike. So you're going to have to eliminate the fractions by multiplying every single term by the LCD. What is the LCD in this case? It's going to be x. So multiply every term by x, so you can eliminate those fractions out, guys. So here, the x's cancel out, leaving you with 6. Here, the x's cancel out, leaving you with 6. And 4 times x is 4x. And then, guys, you add, so you get 12 equals to 4x. And then divide both sides by 4. Shazam. Just like that, sugar plums, we are done with the problem. Now, I need to say this. I'm just going to say this, guys, okay? If you were to solve this problem, and let's say you ended up with 0, okay? Remember, the denominator of a fraction cannot be 0, so you wouldn't count it as a solution. You would throw it out, reject it, and say there was no solution. And why am I saying 0? Because, guys, 0 is what we call the restricted value. That's the number that makes the denominator undefined, that makes the denominator 0. So if you were to solve this, you were to get 0, you couldn't count it as a solution. You would reject it and say there's no solution, okay? All right, next problem. Number 21, guys. Like this one right here, I'll show you what the restriction would be on this one in a minute, okay? 2x minus 7, and that's equal to 9. To find the restricted value on this one, you actually have to set it equal to 0 and solve, so you could figure out what value of x, what x value would make this equal to 0. So when you solve this, guys, you divide both sides by 2, you will notice that x would be 7 over 2. So that's the value that would make the denominator 0. So it becomes the excluded value, as in it's excluded from being the solution, the answer. How do we solve this? Easy problem, guys. Turn it into a proportion by putting the 9 over 1, cross multiply. Yes, sugar plums, cross multiply it. Let me put a line here so I can separate that. And then 9 times 2x, 18x. 9 times 7 is 63. And then we're going to subtract the 18x from both sides. So I'm left with negative 9x is equal to negative 63. And I'm going to divide both sides by negative 9. So x turns out to be positive 7. And there you go. It's not a restricted value. So yes, guys, that's the answer. And just like that, we're done. All right. Clear this out. Oh, guys, we're on the last question. And this question is asking for the domain. When we talk about the square root, guys, you have to be able to take the square root of positive values or the square root of 0. You cannot take the square root of a negative. That's impossible, okay? That's what leads to the imaginary numbers. And so on this one right here, everything inside the square root must be greater than or equal to 0. So to figure out the domain of this, we want to take what's inside the square root, set it greater than or equal to 0, and solve it. So we add 4 to both sides, so we get x is greater than or equal to positive 4. And that's perfectly fine. You just go ahead and type it in here. But every once in a while, they might ask you to express this in interval notation. So in interval notation, would be bracket 4, comma, positive infinity, and just like that, you're done. And guys, that's the review. Seriously, that's the review. And so hopefully you take some time out. We're going on 1 hour now, and watch the review, because you know I work really hard on getting this review to you guys. I had to create it, and I had to record it. I had to figure out all this technology to get it recorded. So I hope you guys appreciate the fact that I did this review for you. I will see you in class, guys. Until next time, bye everybody.